So our concept for this is pros versus Joes, right?
What is this, amateur hour?
37 minutes. Engaged. On location podcast. Pro versus Joe.
Oh, that's it. I've had it with this jump.
But I'm too slick, better pick up the game. Staring.
We can't do this. It's over. That's a cool story too.
We got no food. We got no jobs. Our pets' heads are falling off.
What we're calling this, pros versus, or not pro versus
I don't know who you are.
Joe, pro and Joe, pros versus Joe.
I don't know what you want.
Pros versus Joe. Pros versus Joe.
Regardless of your mind. Another long day, never say don't try. Ain't about pay, my face don't lie.
Shut up, you're so annoying.
Okay, yeah. Mildly hairy chest here. I don't feel so bad. I'm showing a little more skin than normally do, but number one, this is more of a laid-back ambiance with Pro versus Joe. So we're just chilling here. Got back from a short little run with my son. I'm listening to it right now. It's the Django.
Okay, so I listen to the Django
Podcast.
Turn off, I'm done.
And we had some dinner and had some free time. So trying to get this sucker edited so we can get it out to the people, because that's what the people want, right? I was trying to think of something funny to tie in, you know, running with running a business, and also because you'll see we got some a friend and myself were going to run a half marathon, and some other things got in the way to where that's not going to happen. But I did get the DYOJO podcast tank tops and dry fit long sleeves. So don't have a formal process just yet, but if you're interested in merch, we have it. We just don't have a formal process for ordering it or distributing it. So anyways, but I was thinking, like, actually, this is unashamedly, I'm gonna do a poop joke, but
You come out with stink like that. Poop. Your poop mouth. Come out with poop out of your mouth.
the one thing about if you're gonna do a longer run is if you feel like you even remotely need to go number 1 or number 2, do it. Okay? Do it. And the same thing I think applies in business. If you're getting ready to have a long meeting, make sure you schedule in some time where you got a long drive to go meet with a client, or you're going to sit down for a marathon podcasting sesh. Make sure you go number 1 and or number 2 before those big events, so that way you can fully focus and be committed to seeing the thing through. Stay hydrated. It helps with number 1 and number 2, helps with your mentals, and keeps you focused. And also, number 1 tip for running, which also applies to businesses: never run with somebody faster than you. Never. It's not a good idea. You'll always feel, or do you always run with somebody faster than you so that way it motivates you? I guess it really depends on. Some people really need, a friend and I were talking about this while we were running, some people really need that encouraging voice where it's like, yeah, you can do this, keep going. So we're thinking about, like, an app would be cool, and maybe it's already been made because we're not that inventive, but, so people that need that's probably more of those out there, but mine's more like, your fat ass isn't gonna get rid of itself, so keep going. Is that all you got? Are you running with the water today? Yeah. So your age is really starting to show. Pick it up, old man. That would be a good app.
Terrible. Yes, but great.
That would be a good one. Honestly, we're trying to keep this as safe for work as possible, our app would say a lot more things, and that's kind of why this is coming out choppy, because I don't want to say those things. We don't know each other that well yet, our tens of followers. So if we ever have our meetup, maybe we can talk about what we'd really say to our inner selves. If you're watching the video, you'll notice I changed my clothes halfway through recording the opening. That's because I recorded the wrong opening for the wrong episode, so I had to take out some of it. So, every now and again we make mistakes, but if I didn't mention it, you wouldn't know. But anyways, this little bit more of a broader perspective. We recap parts of episode 5 from the DYOJO podcast, talk about technology, things that Brian and Brandon are learning at All American, and how those relate to our industry. It is very encouraging, to be around people new to the industry. I think, I wrote an article about this for the Intentional Restorer, where it's a good way if you're feeling burned out or frustrated, or just not as passionate as you used to be, to connect with people who are coming into the industry. And it's a great way. There should be that give and take, where you give back and you take maybe some encouragement from the young guys. Crazy. Try it out. I think it's a fun discussion. We try to keep it light. So if you haven't already, please subscribe on our YouTube, the DYOJO YouTube. Listen, subscribe, leave a rating on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, or Google for our podcast audio episodes, and keep up to date. If you want your email added to the list, go to thedyojo.com or to thedyojo.podcast.com. I try not to send out too much mail, so we do more like once a month. So anyways, thank you so much for listening. Our viewers are climbing both in the views of the videos and subscribers, so we appreciate it. Enjoy Pro versus Joe. All right. Well, hey Brian, how's it going there, guy?
It's going good. How are you? Brian. Hello.
No,
Nice mic.
A little jealous. Yours, I think we established we have the same brand, but yours obviously has some customization.
You got that fancy cover on though.
Yeah, my son bought me an arm, so it's got this arm, right?
That. Okay.
And then I think this is supposed to keep the mouth breather noises.
With,
Oh man,
we're such pros.
yeah. And so, so we'll see. I was hoping maybe it would help drown out some of the background noise. So we'll see. But yeah. So man, you got the Jordan jersey on?
I do.
You going back through and watching it all over again? The Last Dance.
Watched it twice. So, I figured you always gotta. I haven't worn this jersey I think since maybe high school. So. It's a little big.
Oh, dang. Really?
Yeah, just in the back of my closet. So I'm like, hey,
that's
kind of fun to throw it on.
Yeah, the retro. Did you watch the 30 for 30 on Lance Armstrong?
I did. Did you watch it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we watch TV like when we go to bed. And so my wife will be there and all of a sudden you hear, she's asleep and then same, I'll like come in and out. So I can't say I've seen all of it.
It took me a good – it's only 2 episodes, right? It took me a good maybe 2 weeks to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as exciting as basketball, right? I mean, kudos to those guys. I couldn't do that even if I –
No, it's more like it was weird for me because and like most Americans, like you had such an affinity for him. And like what he did was so inspiring. I mean, I had a Livestrong bracelet for however many years.
Yeah.
But then to just see how much of like, pardon the French, like an asshole the guy is.
He's an asshole, sir.
I know that. What's his name?
That is his name, sir. Asshole. Major asshole.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, and he doesn't care. Michael Jordan was, and that was what was really interesting was watching both him and Michael Jordan were great, right? But then you see Michael Jordan was just really competitive, but still people liked him. Lance Armstrong was just suing, killing, like whatever he could to win.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. He's
Well,
just like,
what was Jordan pushed people to be better, right? Like, you know, a lot of guys
Yeah.
say I didn't always like it, but he definitely and he held the standard, right? And
right.
that was the one point Lance Armstrong said that. He goes, you know, LeBron, I don't remember who else he mentioned. I can't remember if he said Jordan. He goes, I'm in that category. You know, I should be, but do I care? No, you know. I personally enjoy listening to podcasts when I'm driving or doing surveys or out on a job site or even in the office doing work. And so I recently found this one, Behind the Bastards, and he looks at it's a look through history at some of the most nefarious characters in history, and his ad transitions are impeccable. So he'll be talking about somebody that dumped nuclear waste somewhere and say, you know what doesn't dump nuclear waste into oceans, and then blah blah blah. He'll plug the product, and you know what shouldn't be listed with the greats like LeBron and Michael Jordan. The book we're about to release, Be Intentional Estimating. I was thinking one aspect of the book is I remember after the recession. So I had the last Great Recession. I had my own business. Completely tanked, completely died. That was devastating. But tons of that are included in the book and probably will be in the upcoming collaborative book that I'm doing. Been working on for some time now. On episode 20 with Rachel Stewart, we talked about she launched her career in restoration during the last recession and some of the lessons they've learned at her company. So I wanted to play a clip of that just to plug other episodes of the DYOJO podcast. So here we go. Let's listen to Rachel Stewart, author of Unqualified Success.
Again, the 2008 crisis was a personal crisis for our family or whatever, that then it led me to go back into employment. So I think just in general, like, and that's been one of the best things in my life, like having this opportunity and growing and all of the things that have come out of it, like that would have never happened without that crisis. So I think that's the first one, is just that a lot of times when we're in something that's really difficult and it feels really heavy and really bad, but what it, like the change that it forces in, you know, you to take, and some of the steps that you end up having to go down and the road that you end up can actually be, you know, one of the biggest blessings in your life when you look back on it. So I do think that crisis can lead to opportunity.
Let me hit you with some knowledge.
That crisis can lead to opportunity. So I would say that first. Secondly, you know, one of the things that we did in the 2008 is that we were really careful about cash. And I think everybody's kind of talking about that. But we've always kind of run the operations to, you know, be slim, be efficient, manage overhead, all of those kind of things. And so, you know, we never really kind of got into leveraging for our equipment or the next thing. We're also all careful about like growing at, you know, with the cash that was generated from the business. So being really careful about not over leveraging. And then the other thing is we got really careful about collections.
If you're good at something, never do it for free.
If you're not on top of your AR, now's the time to really get on top of your AR, because that's one of the things that we saw. So yeah, insurance kept paying and all that kind of stuff, but if those checks went to the homeowner and they were in a tight situation and stuff like that, trying to get that money later. So being really strict about your policy there, you know, and working with the insurance company to figure out what their policy is about getting work authorization, like anything with a two-party check, following that money all the way. So, you know, and all it takes sometimes is really great communication with the homeowner, so they know what to expect, and you know when that check is getting there, and you're saying, okay, a check's coming tomorrow, somebody will be by to pick it up, all of those kind of things. So you're not sitting there waiting, because if you're waiting 3 weeks and then try to go follow up, it can be a difficult situation depending upon, you know, the situation that they're in. And so trying to be, you know, understanding and compassionate about that, but also know where your money is.
Like, you probably care, you know.
Well,
like,
what I thought was really interesting was he retired and he won, I think, 7 in a row? And
was it
then
7? Jeez.
Yeah, 6 or 7. And it was funny. I was talking to my wife about how I remember because the Tour de France obviously always happens at the same, you know, time period of the year.
Yeah.
And it was always my family and we would always go to Sun River when I was in high school and junior high. So like every year it was like we seemed to be in Sun River when the Tour de France was on. And so it was this big deal. You would watch and see the updates and stuff like that. And so he wins 6 or 7, whatever it is, he retires, and then he goes 2 or 3 years and doesn't race. And no one thinks he's a cheater.
Yeah.
He's running Live Strong, all that. Then he sees the guy that wins. I think he was from Italy. And he's like, oh, I can beat that dude. And so he decides to start racing again. But then Floyd Landis, who's the other guy that got caught for cheating, that literally like he won the yellow jacket, won the race, and then like 10 minutes later, they're like, you got caught for cheating, take the jacket off.
Oh, dang.
So, well, he was Lance's teammate before.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to get on the team that Lance was going to start, I think in 2009 or whatever year it was. But they told him, no, you can't be on the team. You're too much of a risk. Oh. And so that literally that night when they said you can't be on it, he started ratting Lance Armstrong out. And that's what led to,
because they were all doing it, right?
Yeah, the whole sport. I mean, literally the year they showed that the year before Lance Armstrong won his first one, like it was like 50% of the tour got banned or something like that. Some crazy thing. Oh, but you think about it, if he wouldn't have come back, Lance Armstrong would have been thought of as, you know, he never would have got caught.
Yeah, yeah.
He lived strong or what. I mean, think about that. Like, what would he be in the world right now? Would he be like an Oprah type of
right?
If he would have just had 7 and been done, you know? I don't know. I thought that I didn't know that about his story, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I missed I must have missed a bunch of that stuff because I think we've watched both episodes but didn't catch it. But yeah, he doesn't.
It's at the end of the second one.
Doesn't come across as a very. I thought he won like 5, but he was a great story, right? He survived cancer and was kind of. And that's what that one gal mentions, you know, she's like, you know, there's so much good that's been done. And I think that's a dichotomy of a lot of people, right? There's a lot of good that gets done. And
well, and I thought when I saw they were talking about everything he would do for cancer, I immediately thought of Russell Wilson. But what they said was interesting about Lance was every single time he went to the hospital to see someone that had cancer, he never let cameras come in.
Yeah.
He would go in and have one-on-one. So it's like, how can you be compassionate and like that good at that, you know, that stuff? But then you're just behind the scenes, you're just a straight jerk.
Yeah.
I used to really like Ramses. I wanted to become him. But it turns out he's a real douche.
I don't know. It was weird. It was weird.
I think that's, you know, to some degree the morality of it, right, is the you know, I felt bad. There's that one guy, I guess Lance beat the 2 years that he came back, the Ulrich or whatever, you know, and was just, so you saw the times, it was like 6:06, and the closest the guy got to him was like 1 minute or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's this book I read a while back, and it talked about like one of the, it was kind of a horror-ish book, but they get these sores, and there's a quote in there where it's like, once you stop caring about the sores and you kind of give into it, that's when it takes over. And I think morality is a little bit that way, right? If you start to take that decline, once you justify it, then you have to justify your justification, and you have to keep protecting it, right? And then ultimately, right, like you said, 50%, if everybody's doing it, baseball, right? I mean, like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you think about Barry Bonds. I mean, he won, 4 MVPs before he started juicing? And so it's like he still was good. And that's what they said. One of the bike riders had said about Lance Armstrong was like, yeah, he was doped. But the fact that he won 6 or 7 in a row, he's like, that's 20 days times, 6 or 7 in a row that you're riding up and down this mountain terrain. You're not falling once. You're not getting sick. You're not getting injured for 6 straight years. That's like 120, something like that. that in itself is a feat.
Yeah.
I mean, they show this one where he's coming around a corner and
That
a dude
guy bails.
he bails right in front of him, and he has to ride down the hill and cuts through like a switchback, hops over a ditch, and gets back on, and he's totally fine.
Yeah.
You know, like.
I remember they were saying it was amazing he didn't fall over or whatever, but one, two, it's like people, I don't know, people get a tiff about sports. It certainly made baseball a lot more interesting, right? You look at the athletes of today, it's like, I don't know. You kind of wonder, is anybody clean, right? You know, because they're just beasts, you know.
Well, and I think it's so interesting. Like you think they say like people like LeBron or Russell Wilson, they spend over $1 million a year just on their body.
Yeah. From
nutrition to hyperbaric chambers to training, things like that. Tom Brady, same thing. I mean, he's eating avocado ice cream and you know what I mean? Like it's nuts to think like how good would Hank Aaron or Muhammad Ali or Michael Jordan, you know, athletes before Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
You know, if they were naturally
did you see
good.
The video of like Mike Tyson? Like,
oh yeah, he's like
ripped
he looks
again.
Scarier now than he did back then.
So quick. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, and it's
would you watch him fight? Would you if he fought like Holyfield or whatever, like they're talking, would you pay for the pay-per-view? I would.
Oh, Evander Holyfield again? Yeah.
They're saying, it was Holyfield or I remember maybe Lennox Lewis, I can't remember, but one of those.
Yeah.
One of those guys
he's
age.
Insane. He's insane. Yeah, I don't know. The sports thing is tricky, you know, the morality of sports and whatever. And I don't know. I've never been that good of an athlete to, you know.
Right. Yeah, me neither.
Been on the verge. Just like the best athletes are the ones that are doping, you know. So it's like,
right.
Or you know. So who knows? But yeah, that was crazy. So what are you smoking tonight?
La Aroma de Cuba.
La Aroma de Cuba
came in, and I think it's a Mi Amor. So La Aroma de Cuba is the brand, and then Mi Amor is the.
Oh.
Yeah, came in that mother load pack I got.
You get did you say every Father's Day you get a big bundle?
Yeah, there's a website that I go to, Cigars International. It's a great site.
Okay.
If you want to sponsor the podcast, I'd gladly. I don't know about you, John, but I'd gladly take that.
We just gotta.
Yeah. But I've learned 5 years in a row now, they have a huge like Father's Day blowout sale, which is perfect for us in Washington. Like you don't really smoke cigars in the winter. It's too cold, too wet. But I got one. You can get 7 separate 5-packs for $109.
Holy cow.
So you get, 35 cigars for what, $5-6 a.
Damn.
And like I was telling you, there was a couple in there that came that, at Thunderbird, they're $12-13 a stick. Like,
yeah. That was that one that made me took me to the brink. Would you say it was
Alec Bradley is the brand, and then the cigar is a Prensado.
Prensado. I was gonna say Perdomo, but that's not right.
But yeah, so I kind of on this regular schedule now where I'll season my humidor in like May or June, order the pack, and like stock up for the spring and summer.
So what do you mean by seasoning your humidor? You're much more advanced than I am. Oh, I guess I should say I'm smoking a Leaf by Oscar.
Now you gotta show that. Show it. Look at that thing.
Came wrapped in
That's
some
cool.
of the tobacco in. He just recently, I guess last week they were like 11, and now they're about 9.
You said it was a Dennis Rodman cigar, or
no? This isn't the Karl Malone cigar. That one, he was saying, those celebrity cigars, a lot of times they're, just kind of a gimmick. And the Karl Malone one is a La Aurora barrel aged by Karl Malone. And I asked him, and he said apparently Karl Malone got the tobacco and worked the mix out himself and ages it on his, ranch or whatever.
Have you ever? The only celebrity cigar I've ever smoked was the brand Camacho. Have you heard of that brand?
Doesn't ring a bell.
But they had the Mike Ditka edition.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, that one's good.
Was it decent?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this one's pretty good. Okay, so aging your humidor.
Seasoning.
You gotta seasoning.
Yep. So you
gotta do that once a year, or?
Well, you're supposed to do it like once a month when you have it. So you have to figure out how many cigars your humidor holds. So mine holds about 50, but then I have those like little HumaCare jars in it. That have the beads in it that help keep the moisture. So mine with that, and it'll hold, I think, like 40.
Okay.
And so if you don't have your your humidor at full capacity, it's not going to hold the humidity. So that's why I'll kind of really season it up at the beginning of the spring, and then I'll order a big pack like I did.
So that's why I can tell my wife, I got to keep it stocked or else it's not going to hold the humidity. Yeah. Do some people then stock it with like some like just kind of generic ones on the bottom to kind of keep?
Yeah, just buy crappy ones, but you got to have that. You got to have it filled, or the wood will just suck all the moisture out of it.
Really?
So then you have to use distilled water. You can't use regular water. I don't know why, but something about it being distilled water, and you have to get all the wood wet, but not damp, where you like see puddles of water, because then mold will form, and then we'll have to abate our humidor. And then you just have, because then you'll have your little what's the humidity reader name? I can't remember. But you want to get the humidity up to like 64 to 70%.
Okay.
So you just basically do it once a night until you hit that level. So I'm on my third night right now, and it's at like 68. So then I can just put my cigars in there and then monitor it. And then with that Humicare, those jars, all you do is like once every 10 days, you just fill it up a quarter of the way up with more distilled water, and that'll help just maintain the humidity levels in there. So then you don't get dry cigars.
I think so. I conditioned mine. I did use tap water, so
So that's a faux pas.
That's a Joe move. And then and then I got one of those baggies. I don't remember what they're called, but the
Ovita packs.
Yeah. So I need to get the stuff that you're talking about. So same.
It's cool because if you go on that website, everything to like season your humidor, because you can go on their YouTube channel and they'll have here's how to do it. But all of the jars and the wipes or the Bovita packs, like it's all, each thing only costs like $3 or $4.
I think that might have been do they have their own like blue label, purple label? I think it was either that or like cigar.com or something like that. I used to get a sample
There's like
pack
three big ones I've ordered from, but Cigars International is always like my go-to.
Because when I first got into cigars, I still have it, the cylinder plastic one that's got the thing at the top, and then I would get their kind of sampler pack,
which they say actually is better if you're not going to have more than 10 or 15 cigars at any time. Use that one because it'll hold the humidity.
Oh, okay.
So, if you get a 300, they have those humidors that are like 500 capacity. Well, you got to have that many cigars in there. So
yeah. Well, up until just because of convenience, until you showed me Thunderbird, I think my buddy Greg showed it to me just before we went to the cigar bar. But they over here by Albertsons, it's called Cigar Land, and it's just like a smoke shop or whatever.
Yeah.
And their humidors is like a display case, so they're always dry. But if you're gonna smoke it that night, it's not too shabby. So yeah, that's awesome, man. What are you drinking? Anything special?
Had a little Johnny Walker Black tonight.
Oh, you're going fancy.
Little smoky.
That's
but it's from Costco. It's the Costco bottle, so not really that fancy.
Yeah, but still, I mean, you've got a pro palate for cigars and for the beverages. Okay, so I guess that brings up a funny story, right? So this is Camp 1805,
which is really good.
Hood River, and I don't remember they got started off making rum. Maybe I've already told this story. I think I told the story on one of them, but. So when they got into whiskey, I'm not sure if they make their own whiskey, but they age it themselves, which is fairly common, right? And whatever that last round, 6 months or whatever, they age it in the rum barrels. So it has just a hint, and you've now tasted it, right?
Good. It was good.
It's just a hint of sweetness.
The little bit that was left.
So that's the funny story, right? So these come in, it's a pretty nice bottle, and it's decently priced, but it's not cheap. And it's taped and everything. And I had it in the bag, and, Joe move, stupid. I had it laying down in the back seat, and it just happened to be, one of the hot days. So a hot day here in Washington is 80 degrees, right? And it might have crept up around 85. Well,
in the car, it's probably 100.
We were meeting that Friday and I think that Wednesday I had put something in the car, a big box, that might have hit it, or the heat might have hit it. But Thursday morning I get in the truck and I'm like, why does my truck smell like whiskey? And I was like, no, oh no, no. And so I go in there, and sure enough, there's maybe like 3 pours worth in
If
in
that.
the bottom of the bottle. So, so then I brought it over, and you at least got to try a couple of rounds. But yeah, it's really good stuff.
It's good. I liked it. It was tasty.
It's so good. Once it hits your lips, it's so good. I'll get you a full bottle because I think I'm going back this week to White Salmon, which is just across the river. It's the Washington side of Hood River. Have you ever been to Hood River?
Mm-mm.
It's pretty nice out there.
Down there? Is it?
Down and over, yeah. Down and east.
Down and over?
Along the Columbia River.
Is it like, okay.
You take 84 and then it's kind of.
Oh, is it down where that bridge you go over the huge bridge over the river? Is that?
Let's see. Well, I went into Portland and I went 84, and then I think that transition over is the one that you take to get up into Yakima. I don't remember what that.
So I've been that way because I think. God, I can't remember what that place is. It Junction City?
Junction City's down by Albany and Salem.
I don't know. I'm a Washingtonian.
Yeah.
Not an Oregonian.
Yeah, Junction City. Eugene. That's just outside of Eugene. So there may be another Junction City. It seems like a pretty generic name. Maybe every state has their own. So so we got the whiskeys going. We got you're teaching me, you're proing me up on those things. So
and we're in phase 2, John. Have you been to a restaurant?
Yeah, went to a bar last night.
Ooh, where'd you go?
Cheers over by Best Buy.
Yeah.
It was
Did they know
nice.
your name?
No. Dude, this one guy though, he bumps into me, like swacks me 2 times. He's already, we got there maybe like 9. He's already like fried. And so it's pretty funny because he whacked me in the arm a couple times. He was like, dude, what are you doing here, man? And I was like, did you get here early? And he's like, dude, I never, this is bullshit, man. We're going to open all of them. And then later on when I was cashing out, like he whacked me and like his hand went pretty close to my butt. And I was like, dude, first it's my arm and now it's my ass. Like pretty soon, things are going to get weird. So
it's funny. We went to get takeout at Mr. Jalapeno Mexican restaurant in Bonnie Lake. And I was talking to the owner because they were just like the line was out. Hop Jacks everywhere in Bonnie Lake was just slammed with people. And there was like maybe 15, 20 people in line for takeout too. And I was talking to the owner of the restaurant when he was getting my bill ready. And he's like, stupid Jay Inslee. He gave us no heads up. He told us at 12 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, Jay Inslee we told my story a couple weeks ago on the show. And like, it's like
Friday at 12:30.
These restaurants that have had all of their employees pretty much laid off for the most part.
Yeah.
And they're just expected on a Friday to be fully operational and not expect them to have probably the longest lines they've had in God knows how long because people are ready to go out to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. You could tell people are just like, I don't care where it is, we're going.
Right. Exactly. Which is good, but they're not going to be mad about the business, but you just feel bad, like business owner to business owner. You're like, man, like, there's no foresight by Uncle Jay.
Well, some people were saying it's like we're phase 1B or whatever. It's like not full phase. Yeah,
King
2.
County's phase 1.5, I think, is what they said.
Good God, they're just making this stuff up as they go. It's like
seriously.
But yeah, that's been one good thing we discovered. My friend Greg that I referenced. There's a right by our Albertsons. There's a Mexican restaurant. It's really good. So we've been going there quite a bit. Trying to do the once a week thing at least, order out from a local place and really good.
Yeah, we try to do that
people too. So it's been nice. Well, you mentioned speaking of innovation and whatnot. So you listened to, I think you sent me over some notes for episode 5, right? That was with Andrew McCabe on what do we title that? Innovation is the only way forward, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the bulk of that conversation, I reached out to him about Matterport. That's not something I'm as familiar with. I know the tech, but I haven't. I've used 3D cameras, but I haven't. Apparently, Matterport integrates into Xactimate, or you can pay to have it done. So I know a lot of our listeners reached out after that episode and chimed in. So, but you had a pretty good list of questions.
Hundreds of emails you received, John. Hundreds.
I just inundated. I mean,
God,
inundated.
I gotta get it. You gotta get a new inbox, man. You gotta filter it.
Well, once Cigar International starts sponsoring us, this can become a full-time gig.
Right. That's right. Or Thunderbird, maybe the.
Well, yeah, I did. I think I told you, we won't name names yet, but I did reach out to a cigar company, and they sounded like they were going to send us a sampler pack, but it hasn't happened yet. That was several weeks ago. So,
seal the deal, John. You got to seal it.
Yeah, I'll call them. I'll tell them, listen, guys, this is ridiculous. I've told 40 of my listeners. So pressure's on. So. And now for a not so subtle ad break.
It's really eerie, but it's great to be here. I mean, look, I can't you can't get enough of this. If anyone was on the fence of, maybe I should, I don't know if I should go in this direction. Right now is not the time for sitting and wringing your hands and trying to make a decision. Right. Make a decision. The road of life is paved with squirrels that couldn't make a decision. Okay? So don't get run over. Make a decision and go with it.
Yeah, right. What's your hashtag is thickest file wins, right?
Thickest file wins, baby. Yep.
So let's dig into you had some really good questions. What or thoughts as well?
It was interesting because, like we talked about before, I'm a pretty pro tech type of guy. I try to
Apple guy
work smarter, not harder. Yeah. Well, Apple, all the the iPad on site rather than using the quote old school methods of drawing it on paper. But I was just really interested in that whole. No,
actually,
there's many ways to skin a cat.
I have adapted to. I've got graph paper on my iPad now. Here, I'll show you, just to give people an example. So we do asbestos surveys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it actually, I've learned a little bit from you, and you can actually, it is pretty nice with the highlight sections because you can still do it to scale. You can mark out where you've taken your samples. And then if a floor carries over from a different room, which is a big deal if you're trying to bid it. So I have adapted. I'm trying to adapt from the graph paper now.
The millennial ways are rubbing off on you, huh?
In GoodNotes. Yep. So, well, you do that you send me the measurements from the Bosch laser level, and then you mark out doors and affected areas and stuff like that. And that's really helpful.
Well, and I thought, because I had never heard of that Matterport camera system. And then when he was talking about how he doesn't want to send out, whether it's him or someone else that's, the $125, an hour or whatever they, an estimator is, when that guy's on the job, that's money wasted. Rather, let's get a system where you can put someone that's a $30 an hour employee, give them the technology so that they can still do quality measurements. But all they're responsible is to take the footage, right? And then the estimator can take that footage and create the estimate. So I thought that was really cool as we're talking about, scaling. Like every job walk we go on, Brandon and I are there. Yeah. But if we can get to a place where, $4,500 or whatever the total was, he said, that's a big chunk of change. But you think about it, if we can do 4 or 5 job walks a day rather than 2 or 3,
right?
Well, eventually that's going to increase, that's going to pay for itself in the first job essentially. So I was just more interested in how it works. Like, so you obviously take the 360 scan. He said that you can then take that image and you can blow it up on your tablet or your computer and then get a measurement of like how high the height of the trim or the flood cut size or whatever. Like that's how that works.
Well, so I got a disclosure. So I've got a Ricoh one. We have a Ricoh, the Theta. And so it's one of the lower level 3D, and it's a handheld, and it's got a port where you can screw it in. So if I do a handheld like this, and you'll see a lot of abatement guys do that, it takes a 360-degree picture, and then you can go into Google and you can scan around and look. We haven't messed around with whether you can get dimensions and measurements off of it, but it gives you a really good, you can zoom in, because you walk a job, especially on a commercial structure, you walk a job and you're trying to remember, was that plaster or brick or was it drywall, those kind of things. So it's really helpful for that to remember, okay, I've already got my quantities. I need to remember, was it vinyl floor tile in that room and sheet vinyl or different floor.
Right.
So just from that standpoint alone, you can get so much more out of your picture. I mean, you talked about with the iPad Pro, you take less pictures. Well, with the 360 camera, you really go into each room, take one picture. Now, if you're holding it over your head, you're a part of that, right? As you flip around, you're in that. So the only way to get the full 3D, I think you've got to set up the Bluetooth, or you have a remote, or you can do it on your phone. You have to put it on a tripod, get out of the room, and take the picture. But have you ever done the where you, like on a real estate website, where you can walk through the house?
Yeah.
So each of those points is where they set their tripod with their 3D camera, whatever they're using. Matterport's not the only 3D camera. I think, I believe Matterport is the one that's got the jump on the integration with Xactimate.
Right, which was what really sparked my interest, because like we've said, we're 6 to 7 months into this, and we've already, like, in that time, we're like, okay, like we started off just drawing the spaces. Now we're using our iPad Pro, our Bosch app, and we're really, we're getting a lot more detailed with the photos and the video walkthroughs and things like that. But I was like, wow, like
it might cut a few steps out.
It might shave off 15 or 20 minutes, and you're going to get measurements that, like you said, in that, the thicker file wins, right?
Yeah.
So if you go in there and you can show a full 360 view of every single room, hallway, etc., like that's a game changer.
Well, the thing that Andy and I talked about that I don't understand, I would think especially MIT guys would take, like if you got a MIT company and you're also going to write the repairs, which is what we did at Belfour, that would be so helpful.
Oh, you name names.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think everybody knows I worked at Belfour, but you could, if you walk the job, contents, I could see application for contents, as far as like, you've got a 360-degree scan of where everything was before you touched anything, right? Or admit, this is how the house looked before we touched everything. And then, so if you did a walkthrough prior, now I think he said the average 1,500 square foot home is probably about an hour and a half to get the whole thing, documented. But like if you were going to go all in, maybe you have one guy that's his job. And that's the part I don't know. And I believe what Andy said is you can, I don't know if right off the bat it's like that. Cause like I said, the Ricoh in Google, you can scan in and use the full 360. I don't know if you can scale it. I'm sure there's programs. Matterport, I think there's a charge every time you send it to Matterport and they integrate it into Xactimate. But then supposedly you can zoom in and get dimensions, which you guys are already doing with the Bosch, where you take measurements of, the drywall that was taken out and stuff like that. So, if it eliminates the need for the video and all the photos and it has your measurements, that's definitely time gained, right?
I especially, like, we were on a job walk last week. It was almost a 4-story house. It was this weird, I'd never seen a house like that, where you walk into this landing and then you go down. It was almost like a split level with a third.
Is it built on a hill?
No, it was just flat. But you walk in the main level, and you can go up or down like a split level.
Sure.
But then when you get up to the top level, which is the like the main floor where the kitchen and the bedrooms are, then you hang a left. It's almost like they did an addition or something, and they put a 3rd story up in this like huge media room, right?
You're describing one of the biggest mold jobs we ever did was in Santa Barbara. And the people were on vacation. There's a lot of people that, come to Santa Barbara in the summer and leave, what is it? Not snowbirds or whatever. I guess, you snowbird there. But The washer and dryer, so you come in the house, it didn't have that split level, there was a stairwell. You come in the house and then you go up a level to not a full level, but a couple stairs up to the bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And you go up another step to the bathroom and the washer and dryer. Hot water line burst on the washing machine.
Wow.
And just flooded the whole damn house. Like the neighbor saw water going out into the ocean. But it's like, oh man, talk about, it's probably super convenient, but worst spot to have your washer and dryer and then have it pop,
Yeah.
And there was literally like mushrooms growing off the ceiling, and
Oh, wow.
it was bad. Yeah. So sorry, I interrupted you.
No. But I was saying, like, so we had 4 different levels of flooring because he had consistent flooring all the way throughout all 4 levels.
Dang.
And, naturally you can't replace the floor. So you got a bid to replace, like for like throughout the whole house. So, I mean, drawing that with the Bosch app is convenient and it's great, but like you're measuring every single wall, every corner, every door, like it takes forever. And there's also that, like, if it's going to take a 360 exact measurement, it's going to take a lot of you underbid or you undermeasured or you overmeasured out of the, out of the equation.
Well, and if, again, if you miss something, you can zoom in and look at it, right? It gives you some of those details. I thought Andy brought too a really good question, like, especially on high-end losses. He does a lot of high-end losses. I don't know if you follow him on LinkedIn, but they're doing, big commercial structures. So imagine you had a hotel fire or something like that, and you got to measure each one of them.
Right.
A lot of times there you kind of measure the one room and then you duplicate, but if you were trying to document it, that would definitely speed up your process, especially if it plops it in as a sketch into Xactimate. Then,
but and I looked at it as thinking, like, okay, if we're going to pass this on to another estimator rather than me and Brandon doing it, it's okay. Do I trust that guy or girl is going to do it 100% correctly?
Yeah.
Whereas if all they're doing is we have to train them how to use the device, and they just use the device correctly, that takes so much air out of the potential. Like, oh, I didn't get that room. It's like, well, you're supposed to do every room and every hallway. So then you can always go back, right?
Yeah. Well, in that theory too, if their role was going to be just the Matterport, that could be like, that could be your business development person. That could be, your social media person. That could be incorporated. Somebody that's tech savvy that doesn't necessarily have to know how to estimate, that can duplicate some of your efforts. And exactly Andy's point. So I called him the godfather of remote estimating because he was doing it long before I knew anybody else was doing it. But, like a company like yours where maybe you're not quite ready to bring a full-time estimator on, which is what you're doing with us, right? You utilize the services of somebody else. That's saving you from having that $60,000 to $80,000 to $100,000 a year salary plus benefits and another vehicle and all that. Mm-hmm. And that's what the service Andy provides through claims delegates is companies that aren't quite ready to hire somebody, And honestly, if it keeps working for you, it might be the better option, if depending on what scale you want to get to. Because the salary and all those additional stuff is really where the cost hits you.
It gets back to that overhead thing we've always talked about, like, and because we're starting from the ground level, like, why don't we start out just doing that? I mean, $4,500 is a lot, but I mean, $4,500 for a salaried employee. I mean, you're not going to get a top-notch estimator for $4,500 a month. I mean, therefore in the first month, if you got, say 10 jobs because of it, I mean, it's easily paid for.
Well, I would think too, like Bailey's your BD person now, right? You could put videos together for people for befores and afters. You could send it to the adjusters, because.
And that could be a marketing thing that, we can advertise that, like, we may be new to the game or we may be smaller than, the big ones. Yeah. But we use the same technology as all the big ones, right?
Well, and it's potentially, well, not even the big ones. I'm telling you, man, like some of the biggest companies are not using that. Like, it's crazy.
Well, let's make ourselves look big.
I can tell you, okay, so this is funny. I think I mentioned it on that one. When I got to, we already named the name. So when I got to Belfour,
that was the number one rule, never name names.
Don't name names.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legion.
Blacklisted.
When I started at Service Master, I'm dropping another name, in 2002, I believe it was, the leading technology, we had just transitioned from everybody taking their pictures with Polaroids, right? And you had to the Mavica whatever with the 3.5 inch floppy. Remember, it had like a big ass screen, and it was just a goofy thing. Well, when I got to Belfour, we had like 1 or 2 Mavicas that were way outdated, and they had cameras that were like taped together. And I was like, why are you, they had cameras, I don't know what the lowest, like 2 megabytes or whatever, you know, that could hold like 10 pictures or something.
Right. And then the battery would die.
Crappy pictures. And I remember saying, like, you know, managers had Blackberries. Oh, wow. You know, and you can't take the photos and everything on that. But like the iPhone and the Androids were out. And I was like, why don't we give every tech an iPhone? They're expected to be on call. They should have an iPhone or an Android, and then have them take their pictures, upload it to Google, and you know, it's just like simple technology. And so a lot of those companies, they're like, well, if they break the $100 camera, they're going to break the $4,500 camera. But I think I would set it up the way you're talking about. I would probably have somebody, if I was in a big enough company, I'd have 1 or 2 people that were responsible for Matterport, you know, like.
And we only need
that was
one
their
then,
only
right?
Job. Yeah.
Or maybe 2. And if we have 2 estimators going, that's how many more jobs we can get.
Well, and I don't know if I would even have your estimators do it. I would have somebody that's maybe a lower salary, doing business development, doing social media, because and you could make it a revenue. I know the real estate companies are doing that, you know, those kinds of things, or people that are wanting to sell a house. You know, people that you're working for that want to rent something. Your background, I think that's what we're going to get to, is in property management. You know, I mean, it's another service you can offer, right? And so they're just so that we're not being like Water Damage Daily, he contacted me afterwards and he's like, you know, there's a cost, you know, like some people are offering remote estimating, and you know, that's the other side of it. It might be part of them trying to transition out of having to use adjusters or contractors, because they can just take these photos and then write an estimate, you know. But at the same time, if that's what the insurance company is going to do, we need to be adapting to, you know, that evolution, right?
And I think it's funny, like the bigger companies have a leg up because they have the longevity and they have the notoriety in the marketplace. But if we
they're
only
probably
need
the least adapted to it, though.
That, but also how many of those cameras would they need if they were going to adapt that technology? What type of investment would that be? Whereas us, if we get 1 or 2, that's only say 10 grand. Okay, that's an investment, but still, we're not talking buying 70 of them.
Well, I can say, you know, I've worked for some of the bigger companies, and you know, you have the cheaper, you know, moisture meters, you have the cheaper tech. You know, it's like where some of the smaller companies are like, hey, this can translate. It's the same in small companies and big companies, but you got to trust your people. If you don't trust your people, like, it's so funny because this is a big point of contention for me, and it's always been everywhere I've gone, and it's big and small. It's like, if you really don't trust your 2 people that much, like, do you even look at what your metrics are? Do you train them? Do you train people on how to use these things? Do you follow up on it? Are your managers empowered to train into discipline? You know, I've told the story where I went to train, and then somebody was asking who's paying for this 30-minute meeting. You know, it's like, you know, so if you're not training and you're not holding people accountable, you have no real metrics, and you don't realize that, like, even the big guys, you know, they're almost more susceptible to being taken under, because like like you said, their overhead's so high, like just what they need on a monthly basis just to make payroll is so high, you know, and it's cumbersome.
And you know, the more corporate you get, the more structures and the more departments and whatnot, the more input you get from people, right? There's more people that are like, well, we've been doing it. We had these digital cameras with floppy disks and graph paper for 15
Sony
years.
Mavica.
But you know what I'm saying, though? Like, whereas like we've been doing this for 6 months, it's not like, well, we've been doing it for 6 months and it's worked.
Yeah.
We don't have any of those like, preconceived notions. It's like, hey, like this has worked so far, but you know what? Let's try this. This is another level up. Like, how can this make us more efficient? Can we do,
Right.
like I said, 4 job walks instead of 3 a day? Okay,
Yeah.
well, if that's the case, then boom, we have likely to get 1 more job a day. And
Well,
that just continues to build up the portfolio.
I can imagine, because even now I use a Bosch. I don't use the one that you have that translates it to a sketch, but you know, it's amazing how many people use a laser level and they're like, wow, what is that? You know, I've taken that everywhere I've gone. I was the one that introduced it to the.
It's $100.
Yeah.
It's
and you can get a $40 one if you're not comfortable with that.
If you don't want the Bluetooth one, it's like what, $50?
Mm-hmm.
A 30-foot tape measure is $35.
Yep. And how many people are just tossing those?
And how much longer does it take you to do this? Right?
Yep.
Versus like on a wall, boop, 32 feet. And what happens when you get over 30 on a tape measure? Okay, 30, and then 3 more feet this way.
Yeah.
Is that a 16th or a quarter?
Yep. I made sure. I mean, our techs would always have at least the $30 one, you know, and it's just because it's so much more efficient to have whoever's the first one responding to the loss to try to capture as much as possible, you know. And so, you know, that's you know, especially a company that was doing MIT and repairs, that Matterport would be invaluable. I think on the repair side and the MIT side, it's still invaluable, but apparently there's not a lot of companies, you know, using it. I think there should be a way, you know, that's been a discussion, and if you guys invest in that, I think, you know, that would be an experiment to, there's a couple of forums I'm on and people are talking about how they're charging for it. And some people feel, and Andy said that, he goes, whether you can charge for it or not, it's a tool of the trade. And, you know, a lot of people disagree with that, but I mean, that's a whole nother discussion.
I almost agree with him where it's like we talked about with vehicles. When you show up in a new vehicle or a newer, you know, like when your guys are driving nice trucks or nice vans versus the beater vans and the beater trucks, it's that impression you make. And every single one of these jobs that we go on, especially in the estimating side, like that's that first impression with that client that you're going to make. So if you pull up, like I was telling you about this project in Tacoma we bid a couple weeks ago, and the homeowner was having 2 contractors come out and get bids, which is fine, but they accidentally scheduled us for the same time. So you show up and you're just, it's an uncomfortable situation where you kind of look at the other guy and you're like, sorry. And he's like, sorry. Like,
I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Okay. I'm not going to apologize. I'm a coxman.
You know, you're like, I guess we'll measure, but we come in and we got our Bosch app on our iPad and we're in there measuring, you know, we take probably, it was a smaller space. So it was like a 30-minute walkthrough.
Yeah.
Well, the other guy was there with his notebook and a tape measure, and he was in there for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And, you know, we finish up and we talk to the homeowner, and he's like, well, that guy said it's going to take 4 days. How long do you think? And we're like, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He's like, wow, I'm going to go with that guy. We're like, okay, but it's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And is he using Xactimate? What's that? So we explained what Xactimate was, and we show him everything we've done on the iPad and how detailed we are.
And this was an insurance claim?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we were like, this is everything. We explained, okay, this is how the claim's going to go. We're going to build an estimate in Xactimate. We're going to submit it to your adjuster. Your adjuster's going to review it. He's going to have the ESX file from us, so it makes his life easier, especially because in COVID, you know, the adjusters aren't coming out, so they want that ESX. And here's the document, like that, our PDF that shows all the measurements of the rooms, the flood cuts with all the lines on them and things like that. And that sold the job. He hired us right then.
Yeah.
And we did the job, and it was a week and 5 days.
So you were able to over deliver. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but I look at that and I'm like, okay, in that situation, we won that job, 1, because of our knowledge, but also 2, because we were more detailed. That guy felt more comfortable with us that we were going to take care of him rather than the guy that was in and out in 5 minutes.
Have you ever heard of FOMO?
Yeah.
I was actually just talking to a realtor friend of mine, and you know, it's one thing to be too nice, right? Like, so if you're really nice, a nice person might say, a too nice a person might say, well, choose whoever you want, and da-da-da-da-da. And no, like, you really do in sales, you want to create a realistic FOMO, right? Like, I just want you to know, I'm not trying to speak poorly of that person, but this is what we're going to do, and this is why, and this is how we approach it, and this is how we're going to advocate for you. and carefully. And it sounds like that's what you guys were doing, and we've talked about that more.
Yeah.
But like, you're not trying to bash the guy. You're just
No.
trying to set yourself apart and say,
Yeah.
hey, this is why. And if you go with that, you're gonna have a whole lot more trouble because they don't know the game. All this talk about knowing the game, who does know the game? That's right. Your friends at All American Restoration Services. All American, AARES, All American Real Estate Services is now rebranding as All American Restoration Services. They've got a brand new website, same domain, new revamped website, allamericanres.com. That's allamericanres.com. It's a beautiful drone video through downtown Tacoma. If you've never been to Tacoma, Washington, we've got some pretty cool stuff. The Tacoma Dome and the waterways and those kinds of things, and a beautiful view of Mount Rainier, which is always breathtaking in this area. So they are Tacoma-based. They've been serving Western Washington since 2016. So whether you're in Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, and all areas in between, they are your choice for fire and water damage reconstruction, working with you and your insurance company to get you back to pre-loss condition. They're typically able to arrive on site within 24 to 48 hours of receiving the call. And here, I thought this would be interesting. They've got, some great customer reviews. And so this is one from a local customer, 5 stars. House is all painted. All interior work is complete. By golly, it's done. But it's sad that some of the crew won't be back, though. I might actually miss some of the guys. We had some great conversations regarding teens. They taught me a lot about home repair. I will especially miss the snack dances when they didn't know you were looking and they would grab a snack that I would leave out for them. They would do a little dance of joy as they walked away and got back to work.
Sometimes we like to dance with just us guys. Dance! It's your boy dance party. It's a boy dance party.
Best part, our dog loved them. So how much more glowing is that? You've got a restoration contractor that knows what they're doing. They're clean. They get the job done. They'll do a special snack dance, and your dog will love them. And dogs know better than people, right? Love them. He hasn't loved every worker that has ever come into our house, but he loved All American. Contractors can be flaky, and I've heard many horror stories, but I felt like I was part of the All-American family and have been thoroughly happy with the work the crews that have been doing in my home over the last few months. It took a little bit longer due to COVID. They were always on time, and if things came up, we were notified. If I had questions, I had the owner's number to call, and he would address it right away. Fantastic customer service. Customer service, do the job, they're clean, they'll do a snack dance, your dogs will love them. All American Restoration Services. I'm hooked. So you'll get to know Brian through the podcast. You can check them out on their new website, allamericanres.com, allamericanres.com. Beautiful new website. Great new logo. Same great company offering new and expanded services for property restoration, water and fire damage in Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia. So
well, and I think it's funny knowing the Xactimate thing now, where it's like, if most situations we show up because they're referrals, we don't have anyone bidding against us. But in the circumstances where we are, the second we say, "Is he using Xactimate?" they're always like, "Huh?"
Yeah.
And then it's like right then we know, okay, I'm just gonna unleash my spiel of look at our iPad, look at our measurement, explain the whole process. Talk their ear off for 10 minutes, and then boom, you got the job, because they're going to feel comfortable. And that's the biggest thing with these homeowners or business owners where they've experienced a loss. They're vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
So they've already gone through, whether it's 2-3 days to a couple of weeks of a dry out, the mitigation, their business or their home has been torn up. We want to come in and make them feel like we got you.
Yeah.
We're going to, it's realistically, it's going to take about a week or two for us to come to an agreement with your adjuster, especially with COVID and everything. There's some adjusters that are just taking forever because they're not coming out to the site.
Yep.
So it's a lot harder for them to make their estimate, and it slows that process down. But if we can explain that to them, and then when they talk to their adjuster and their adjuster is like, yeah, your contractor is right. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then they just trust the process. That Pete Carrot, just trust that process, right? Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny though, because again, on the pro side, quote unquote pro side, there's so much of that stuff that you take for granted and you forget. And I can't remember. I was trying to remember while you were saying that. I've had people use things that are just real basic industry things, and they've said it, and it's true. You know, the best sales tactic is something that's true and authentic, right? And so, you know, they'll say something that is really not anything really innovative or anything like that, but they present it in a way they're like, look, you know, this is what we're going to do, and nobody else does this, and da 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 da. And it creates the FOMO. You know, they use the industry against you because they're presenting the information in a better way, you know, by saying, hey, you know, exactly like you're saying, we use Xactimate. What's Xactimate? Oh, well, if your contractor's not doing that, it's going to make the process harder, you know. And so you can use something that a lot of people view as a disadvantage as an advantage, right? And say, you know, we will work with your insurance adjuster. We try to make the process, you know, it's a paradigm, right? It's the client, you know, and clarifying their responsibilities and expectations, the carrier's responsibilities and expectations, and then the contractor. And we need all, because there's so many people that just absolve the client of any responsibility, you know, and they're just like, we're going to take care of it, and you're not going to have to pay anything. And that's like a crappy expectation to set, because
and we'll give you your deductible back.
Yeah. And sometimes you can do that, right? If you finish the job early, or if there's wins somewhere or something like that, you can credit them, you know, and those kinds of things. But, you know, I think we've talked about, and my father-in-law taught me very early on, is like, you know, always try to legitimately give them something back, right? You know, our job, I want to give you the worst case scenario, so you have a budget line item. Same for the carrier and the client, right? So you have the expectation coming in. You've set money aside, and the expectations are set. And our goal is to finish ahead of schedule and to be under budget. And if we can give you money back, we will, and then actually do it. You know, that's a great way to set yourself apart, rather than be nickel and diming somebody for every little thing. Oh, we forgot about this 2 feet of base, you know, or whatever.
And at that point, it's almost better to just, because you also want to care about your reputation with adjusters, right?
Yep.
You don't want to have a supplemental for $14 because you forgot, you know, but I think going back to, like, we're not out there to bash another contractor. It's basically like, no, we're just going to sell ourselves. This is what we do.
Right.
Now, that guy can go and ask that other contractor, but realistically, you know what? There's enough work out here for everybody. If you find another contractor, it's okay.
Yep.
But
congratulations, we'll move on.
If you want us to take care of you, this is what we do. We fight for you. We are an advocate for you.
You find the client that, and this is just disclaimer, this is not, you know, some people rip this apart or whatever, but I always try, like, sometimes you meet a client and they honestly don't know what they deserve, right? And then you meet the other client that wants more than they deserve. They want to maximize the claim. Oh, I heard about this and that. And so I always try to explain to people, the job of your insurance company, you pay for insurance. If it's a covered loss, their job is to put you back to pre-loss conditions, no more, no less, right? And so we're going to work with your adjuster to try to determine, you know, what does that look like? And like you said, there's one insurance company where you talk to the adjuster and he's like, I don't agree with it, but this is the policy and this is how it's written. So letter of the law, this is what they bought, you know? And so, it may be crappy, but that's what they bought, you know? And so you're like, you can't really argue with that. Like, you can say, it's a crappy policy, but that's what they signed up for. And, you know, whether that was fully disclosed to them or not.
Wow! The land of make-believe!
But you guys have been fortunate where you have had a lot of adjusters. There are adjusters that still care, right? And they try to do, I just interviewed Kirk Matthews. He was with Travelers and now he's an independent. And they try to do what's fair. And
we now travel back in time to an earlier episode of the DYOJO podcast.
Well, I find so many, like, I've worked and counseled and coached, contractors that are transitioning into insurance work, because obviously, right, that's where the money is. Let's stick it to the insurance companies because that's where the easy money is. And
so I hear both sides. I hear contractors tell me, no, I don't work in insurance.
Yeah, screw them. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of money go out the door.
Yeah.
Probably should.
Well, and that's, I think the hardest is, a lot of general contractors. So, you were working for somebody, you feel like you can make more money. So then that $60 an hour guy, right? They're just thinking, well, $60 an hour is more than I've ever made in my life. And whether they're putting money aside for overhead and profit and taxes and all that, who knows? But yeah, just the one thing about Xactimate, especially if you're a new contractor starting out in the industry, it's very transparent. And if you start to learn how the line items work, you're constructing from the bottom up, re-putting that loss together. And then that's like a company I'm working with here locally. Then you can print out a rough materials list as well as like a projected labor, costs and those kinds of things. So you can budget a lot better than somebody that's just putting in, line item labor, estimated materials. In construction in general, a lot of people are not great at estimating, right? And so Xactimate can be a starting place for
which it doesn't, and I see that all the time, but it doesn't. What I say all the time is just because you can't estimate doesn't mean that you're a bad craftsman.
Yeah.
It just means you're not, not good at putting pen to paper and guessing.
Right.
What is
right?
Cost, and insurance company wants you to guess up front.
Right.
Never really know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other part too, is it is an estimate, right? So we think this is what it will take, and we put all kinds of notes in our estimates, like subject to discovery upon additional damages. But then, that how many, and maybe you can speak to this, how many contractors are like, well, it costs a whole lot more to do it than we thought. Okay, where are your photos? Do you have any kind of justification to show? Well, we fixed it.
Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Not in the world. Like, as long as we can show everything, like the insurance company has the money to pay for it. Let's just pay it out. But if it costs more because you're not good at being a contractor, then that's a different. That's.
Well, like you said, some people are great craftsmen, just not great paperwork people, right? And it really isn't that hard. Take a couple of damn pictures and write a couple of notes on. Keep track of how many hours did you spend on that, or how many linear feet of base extra did you have to buy? It was a lot. Well, how much? And you guys have been, somebody's watching out for you, because you guys have really met with, and I think you attract what you are, but you guys have met with guys and gals that care about the client and want to say, okay, we can't cover this, but we can cover this, or this is covered, and so.
But I think that goes back to what you were talking about on that podcast with, I don't remember what his name was, but on episode 5, that
Andy McCabe.
Yeah, with Andy, is the thicker file wins. So the more detailed we are, and you helping us write really detailed estimates, and we help you write those estimates by getting more detailed information. Advocates for the homeowner.
Right.
Perfect example was a house we walked about a month ago. The guy had a wax ring failure in his bathroom.
Oh, jeez.
So the mitigation company came out, and all they had to do was tear out, I don't know, it was a half bath and a downstairs. Maybe 20 square feet of flooring. Well, that flooring was glued together, and it was out throughout the entire home.
Oh, they removed a fairly minimal amount, right?
Yeah, it was maybe a 5x3 area, 5x4.
Yeah.
But we're looking at it and we're like, well, this floor, we can't. He's like, well, I have extra flooring, so you can just install. We're like, you can't. It's cut and it's glued. So once we pull up, it's going to go through the whole house. Yeah. That homeowner was prepared to pay out of pocket for the mitigation and the repair. And we're like, well, you probably should fight this and try to file a claim, because in our opinion, looking at this, you're due all new floors throughout your entire main floor of your home. And he's like, what? Sure. Sure shit.
Yeah.
We call the adjuster. They come
literally
out.
From the waxing, right? Pun.
Yeah. The adjuster comes out and says, yep, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
And so now, instead of him paying out of pocket to have a crappy floor in his bathroom with a threshold, he's got, I mean, it's a, I don't know, 1,200 square foot, full downstairs, open concept townhome, all new floors.
Yeah.
And all he has to pay is a deductible. So, and then the mid's covered too.
I'm saying, and I know if there's anybody listening, especially that's done program work, is going, wait, the adjuster said what? Because it is, you get so jaded where you feel like they're like, no, only repair, that small part and cut it off at the door.
It's that approach, man. If you go out and you're really just honest with them, you're like, look, you see right here.
Yeah.
Take the time to show them. She was like, you're right. And the guy got a $13,000 or $14,000 claim for his new floors and his mitts covered, rather than him paying whatever it would have been out of pocket, $4,000 or $5,000 out of his pocket, and he's got a cheap floor in his bathroom now. So
yeah. Well, and so much of that too, I think that's why a lot of people, you get the people that look at property restoration and insurance work and think, it's just an endless gold mine, and then there's other people that have dealt with that situation where, the insurance or the adjuster or the claims review have just whittled it down to twigs, and they're super frustrated with it. And so it's good. It's good. That's been my experience. I don't know, 80% of the people we've dealt with have been good people. And there's usually some way you can find a way to make it happen. Like we've said multiple times, you can shear a sheep multiple times, but you can only skin it once, right? So you don't want to burn bridges.
Yeah.
But it does, and you'll learn eventually. Sometimes it comes down to principle, and you're like, this is not a relationship that is ever going to happen. And so we will go tit for tat, line for line, and it just becomes part of the game, where it's
we had an experience with an adjuster like that about a week ago, where she told the homeowner that we were price gouging.
Oh,
because we were saying that the whole house, it had solid hardwoods throughout, on-site finished flooring. And we had bid to lace in the hardwoods that were affected, and then, refinish throughout the entire home.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Very common.
And the homeowner had like loose carpet on all three of her bedrooms on top of the hardwoods. It wasn't installed carpet.
Oh, right.
It was loose. So she was trying to tell the homeowner that she does not deserve to have all of her hardwoods covered. And this contractor is trying to price gouge. And I'm going to send out a program contractor.
Yeah.
And so, of course, then the adjuster goes on vacation.
Yeah.
So this homeowner, we bid on that job a month ago. She still has no contractor.
Huh.
And
to clarify, the rugs are set. There's no pad. They're basically, it's carpet, but it's set as a rug.
It's basically an area rug. A big rug.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. It's not tacked down. It's no padding.
No, zero. You could pick it right up.
Yep.
And the first program contractor doesn't show up. The second program contractor doesn't show up.
Really?
The third one finally comes and gives a bid to only basically sand and refinish the kitchen where the loss was. And that's it. And the adjuster said, this is all you're getting. Wow. And issued her a check for maybe a third of what our cost was.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I was telling the homeowner, I'm like, I'm sorry. Like it is what it is. Like we just can't, it sucks. It's a crappy situation for you. And I'm telling you, like, we have the same insurance company is working on another house that we just got approved on for the same type of loss.
Yeah.
And they are covering the exact thing we quoted, which was sand and refinish the entire main floor after we repair the hardwoods that were affected. That was approved.
Adjuster, though.
The different adjuster, same company. So it's like, how can we be price gouging on one job in Sammamish, but then in Kirkland we're doing it's literally like almost the exact amount of the same square footage.
Well, and just to clarify for people listening, those are both high dollar, high value home areas. I mean, those are where a lot of the nice homes are.
Yeah, both houses are worth. I mean, the Sammamish house is worth, I think we looked on Redfin, like $950. The Kirkland house is worth, above $700. It's not like we're talking about
manufactured homes or something. Yeah.
So, and ultimately, I don't know. So in situations like that where you're just, you feel bad for the homeowner, you're like, I tried to advocate for you. I tried to fight for you, but you know what? I'm sorry, but you're going to have to deal with your insurance or fight for I mean, that's out of my hands. I can't do anything about it.
Well, now, that's one we've talked about, like episode 1 was with David Princeton from Claim Advocate Services. And that might be one that, there's people out there that can help them. And I do think, like you guys have said, like you take it to a certain point, but you have to draw the line, right? And say, like, unfortunately, this is no longer our area. That's between you and your insurance company. But hey, there's also this resource. Or you got like Ed Cross, the restoration lawyer, if somebody wants to take it legal, and unfortunately, that's the case. It's so crazy.
So in that type of situation, John, when she's issued a check, is that still something that you would recommend that we have legal get involved?
Off the record, but on camera, right?
I made a huge, tiny mistake.
I really, like you said, I feel bad for people where I feel like they're asking for something legitimate and they're hitting a brick wall. And honestly, I didn't know. I mean, I've known about public adjusters, and that's kind of a bad term in the property restoration world. If you're known to be working with public adjusters, you can get yourself in trouble or blacklisted or whatever. But if it's a legitimate claim, then I would just say, hey, if you want to reach out to somebody, here's somebody. But that's what people got to understand, because they do that like in flood situations or hurricanes, right? They have a state obligation, the insurance company does, to get like a settlement out to those people within a really strict amount of time. Yeah. And so you've got, 6,000 losses, in a small area, and this insurance company has to get a check out, And so what people need to understand is that's not always the final check. It's just what they have to do to meet the requirement that's put on them, right. I mean, and in that sense, kind of, the insurance is part of this bureaucracy that we're all part of, that, like the Jay Inslee thing, that doesn't always make sense, right? But it's a requirement. Yeah. And so, that's honestly, that's fairly new to me, saying that there's another. I've always told people, I go, you don't have to take their first settlement, right? You as you're the customer, talk to your agent. You're paying your agent, and unfortunately, a lot of people. There's 3 tiers to that, right? A lot of agents don't necessarily know what they're selling and don't want to stick their neck out because, they're part of a system that they've got to protect. Right. And then the few agents that do stick their necks out, they're, again, beholden to whatever system they're a part of. And so, but a customer, you should expect that your agent advocates for you if you don't feel something's right, and so. Yeah.
But I just think it's BS, especially when these adjusters talk like that and they're not even coming out to the site. Like how can you speak with any sense of intelligence on the condition of the home if you're not even going to go out there?
Well, the little bit of knowledge I have, after 18 years is there is such a thing as like line of sight written into a lot of policies. So like if a door stops, technically they can say, this flooring stops at that line of sight, but if it's a continuous hardwood floor that you're refinishing, that's no hardwood floor person is going to say, yeah, I can finish up to this door break. So that program contractor may be agreeing to it, and then they'll get a hardwood specialist out there. And that's the other way you can go, is like, well, let's get 3 hardwood specialists to come out and give estimates. And if all 3 of them are saying, and a lot of times you do that with roofs too, you'll get an insurance company that says, well, I feel like you can patch this roof in, we've patched in worse roofs before, and so you get 3 roofers out and they say, well, we can't. And that technically, like if you have a complex roof line, if this roof line and then the next roof line is up, they could potentially say, well, we're only replacing the back slope. I've had that happen. We're only replacing this section of it. So, that gets into so much more of the weeds than I care to dig into. And I don't think it's healthy for contractors too. So that's where somebody like David or somebody that digs into contracts, right?
Right. And that's the law, like you look at it from a contractor standpoint. Yeah, we could put all that effort into it. But then eventually the amount of effort you're putting into it, all your profits going out the door because you're spending so much of your bandwidth on that versus trying to get other work.
that's the homeowner too, right? If you're like, well, we really
Yeah.
feel this isn't right, and they're like, well, these guys said they can get started, and it's like, if they're not going to fight, then I'm not going to fight, right? But you could
Exactly.
say the next step would be, well, the other thing I would advise you to do is get 3 hardwood companies out here and see whether they agree with that scope of work, because I guarantee you, your restoration contractor, your program contractor, they're going to hire somebody third party, a subcontractor to do that. So, so get somebody that specializes in that particular aspect to tell you whether, that's legitimate or not, and so,
right.
And again, that's their responsibility. But if they want to go with the program guy, all right, peace out.
It is what it is.
Yeah. So I don't, I think you and I have kindred spirits on that. I like to try to fight for people that I feel like, are getting taken advantage of. But you also have to draw the line like, hey, you homeowner, if you don't think this is right, you're going to have to do some homework. You're going to have to make some phone calls. I wouldn't cash that check because then you're basically agreeing to it.
Right. I know this keeps leading into more stories, but like we're working on this one right now at a 3-level condo in Ballard.
Oh, yeah.
Where the loss occurred because some sort of plumbing backup within the building's plumbing. Nothing to do with the individual homeowner, right?
Yeah.
So it flooded in the 3rd floor unit and then downstairs into the 2nd floor. Well, the 3rd floor and the 2nd floor tenants are the 2 people on the HOA board for the building.
Oh,
just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this.
And the HOA has a crappy insurance policy that has a loss limit of $25,000.
Okay.
The mitigation alone for the project was $21,000.
Oh, jeez.
The upstairs unit was let's just call it 25, and then you got the downstairs unit, which is 13.
Yeah.
Then you have right in there, let's just call it $75,000.
Yeah.
Well, you're only getting 25 from the insurance.
Yeah.
And that's going to the HOA, and you got one unit upstairs that's a little bit, it's twice as much on the build back as the downstairs one is because it affected all their floors.
Well, I think we talked about that. The HOA gets a little tricky, and this is maybe dives into your property management experience, but the HOA typically covers the outside, the walls, and the common spaces. But then those individual owners are responsible to have policies on their contents and their interior if they're owners. So that's where
it's very similar to like a renter's policy, right?
Except for renters is only contents, whereas if you own a condo, you have a structural policy that wherever the HOA's responsibility ends, your insurance policy kicks in.
Well, and what's interesting is because the adjuster on this one is actually, he's really nice. So he was explaining the whole thing to me, and he's like, if they had a limit loss of $75,000, everything would be covered other than content manipulation. That would be on the homeowners.
Yeah.
But he's like, Brian, I can't do anything. Like their policy is $25,000. So I'm issuing them a check for $25,000.
Yep.
So both the upstairs and the downstairs tenant are like, we got to get started. I'm like, who's paying?
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you're going to pay our mitigation, our partner vendor that did the mitigation, I'm not going to say, well, we'll pay us and don't pay the MIT.
Yeah.
Because they've already done the work. So make sure they get paid.
Right.
So we're protecting them. But then you look at it, it's like, okay, of the 25, 21's already going to the mitigation. That's gone.
Yeah.
So you got $4,000 left. That being said, the 3rd floor tenant did not get his own insurance policy.
Oh.
He bought that condo a year ago, and his broker told him the HOA homeowners policy will cover his unit.
Now it's everybody suing everybody.
He has no coverage. So you got $4,000, and they're asking me, well, what's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a litigator. I'm not on the HOA board.
Yeah.
You guys need to figure out, okay, if you're going to pay the mitigation company, you got 4 left.
Yeah.
Say you get $2,000 a unit. Okay.
Yeah.
Downstairs tenant, you're 12. So you owe $10,000. Upstairs unit, you're 25. You owe 23 then.
Yeah.
Who's paying for that?
Yeah. Yep.
Because I'm not, no matter how much sympathy I have for you guys, and it sucks. You're in the middle of this. and your adjuster says it sucks, you're in the middle of this. Everybody feels bad for you.
This is what you bought. Yep.
But the fact of the matter is you had an oversight.
Yep.
You guys run the HOA too. It's not like you just had oversight on your own policy. You have or oversight. The adjuster told me he's never seen a policy like this for a building of this size have a limit loss of less than $75,000. And they have 25.
Yeah.
You're in that situation where I'm having these conversations with all these people and they're pissed. And I'm like, I'm not the bad guy. Your adjuster's not the bad guy. You guys, you HOA chose this cheap insurance policy, and now you're effed.
Yep. Well, I can remember we went to an apartment loss. It was a fourplex, 2 stories. Somebody was outside, and why the apartment complex had. So you had the apartments, they had a little fenced-in area and concrete and then bark chips, right? And of course, that's where tenant A was smoking, right? Flick the cigarette in the middle of summer into the bark chips. It catches fire. So they've got their unit is hosed, right? Their contents are hosed. And then the unit next to them, quite a bit of smoke damage, some structural damage. The other guys, mostly smoke damage. And then the unit over in the corner, I think we put an air scrubber in there for maybe, 3 days and pretty much took care of it with a charcoal filter.
Yeah.
So guess who's insured, right? The unit that we put an air scrubber in. And I can't remember. I think these guys over here that had the second least amount of damage had renter's policy and the other 2 didn't. So the structural damage is going to be covered because the apartment complex had insurance. But the renters didn't pay the $8 a month or whatever for their renter's insurance. I just don't understand. I get it. I mean, a lot of bureaucracies don't allow apartments to require it, but it's like, man, it's $8 a month, especially if you have auto insurance. It takes that down. You're probably paying like $4 to $6 a month for renter's insurance, and it's probably not going to cover everything.
It's a hamburger.
Yeah, it's not going to cover everything, but it's sure going to help.
Yeah.
I don't know. Lattes are a lot more expensive nowadays. Okay, so, this is probably the longest we went in on recapping an episode. Sounds like you got a lot from that. And Andy's a very knowledgeable guy. Are you aware of the Restoration Rebels on Facebook? I think I sent you the info for that.
Mm-mm.
So it's like
I think you said I haven't looked at
on Facebook. There's Restoration Rebels. There's Alliance of Independent Restorers. There's NORP. And Andy's out of Bend. Alliance of Independent Restorers is Clark Brown, and he's, I think, down south. And then NORP is out of, I think it's Whitney Wiseman. He's out of Florida. But there's some pretty good discourse that goes on in there. It made me think of you the other day. There was somebody I think it was in NORP talking about, we're contractors, we're thinking about getting into insurance work and what should we know and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah. But any other maybe closing thoughts on episode 5? I guess, so what are kind of so you're thinking you want to get into the Matterport? You're thinking that's something you're wanting to invest in then? Any other, what are kind of your takeaways and actionable?
I haven't looked. Yeah, I haven't looked in depth at it, but I do think that, like we said, because we're at the, we're not at ground zero anymore, but we're in the foundation.
The ball's moving. Yeah.
Yeah, before we start getting too far down the road, let's see if there's something that we can incorporate into our processes that will just make us more efficient, make us better at estimating, make us.
So you got your Michael Jordan, right? You are the Michael Jordan. Brandon's your Scottie Pippen, right? You got your Phil Jackson. Or maybe what was the coach they fired before Phil Jackson?
Phil Collins.
A real good coach, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so now you need to bring in your.
Oh no! You know who you are, John? You're the Tex winner. You're the guy they talked about that created the triangle. That they still use.
Dude. You're the behind the scenes. I love it.
Because
that's awesome.
Yes, you know, because not only the Bulls use a triangle, but the Lakers did too.
Yeah.
So that's 11 championships right there, man.
Man, that probably makes me feel better than you probably ever know, because I love that. The guy behind the scenes that really played a key role that's not any part of he's the unspoken, the people that know, right? But most people, that's not the name that rolls off the tongue of most people, right? So
that's right.
I'll take it. That's a very nice compliment.
I'll call you Tex.
Okay.
You're the Tex.
There we go. All right, man. Well, we opened with whiskey and cigars. I'm just about done with my cigar, and I poured my second.
I want to close with a quote that came from that.
Oh,
that just stood out. That was I love.
You mentioned Andy's got 2 great quotes from that episode, right? You already mentioned thickest file wins is kind of his hashtag on like LinkedIn and stuff like that, and it's a great.
Yep.
It is a great, and he lives that. It's and I really do think that's for people that are on the fence about Matterport. What you got to consider is if you have to go to court, I don't think you should live in fear of going to court, but you should set your systems and your documentation up as though that's a reality, right? And so if
CYA, man, cover your ass. It's always just make sure that you are protecting your back.
Well, because if you go to court and you've got paper scribbles and somebody's got Matterport, you're just gonna get your clock cleaned, right? So, All right, hit us with this quote. This is Andrew McCabe, claims delegates. What's the quote?
Yep. The road of life is paved with squirrels who couldn't make a decision.
Boom.
I love that. Indecisiveness, man. You have to, and it's what's funny is like hearing that about that camera. Now I'm going to just like, would my job be better or worse if I had that? And I am, in my opinion, granted, I have to do some, research on it, but for the most part, based on what he was describing, I'm like, I got to get that. I don't, especially because it's not 50. We're not talking 50 to 100,000. It's $5,000.
Price has gone way down. Yeah. Well, it's like when the FLIR cameras first came out, the infrared cameras, they were like 12, 14K. And now you can get them even, I had one with the FLIR, I think it's the M87 or something like that. It had it incorporated into the meter, and some people are knocking them, but I love that meter. But that, that you do a good job of that, and I think it speaks to your partnership, right? You're able to focus on the areas that you're really strong and good at, and Brandon takes care of the things that he's really strong and good at. You've brought in Bailey, who's helping expand your capacity so you can focus on more of those things. And
well, I think it's really cool. We're trying to knock out as much as we can in one job block. Where now we've started doing just assuming if we get the job, we don't need to come back. So the biggest thing is if there's a kitchen, okay, well, I don't want to have to come back and measure the cabinets and the layout.
Yep.
So what Brandon will do is Brandon will look at and draw out the layout of the kitchen, the size of the cabinets, things like that. And then I can go and be measuring and drawing out the layout of the space of the whole house.
Yep.
So you kill 2 birds with one stone. And so I look at that and I'm like, okay, if we just continue to document more and more and more and more. Yeah, we may be there for an extra 15 minutes, but you know what? If we don't have to drive back to that house, that's 3, 4, 5, however many hours on that second return trip that we're not having to go.
Well, in the last episode, what just published was Pro versus Joe 003. We talked about, the pickups from your guys not having to make multiple trips, right? And that's I was just talking to another contractor about this. They're talking about scheduling. And I was like, we put so much into Xactimate, so much time goes into it, right? You've already, especially in a metro area, you've spent the hour getting there. You're going to be there for half an hour, an hour. You might as well, like you said, spend another 15, 30 minutes, get all of the details, act like you're going to get the job, right? And then the same thing with your Xactimate estimates. I always try to teach my estimators, write your estimate as though you're going to hand it to a carpenter and they can work off of it. Because if you spend a little bit of extra time while you're writing the estimate, then you don't have to go back and recreate your production plan, because you may inspect it, like you said, that one house that still doesn't have an answer, you may inspect it in February. You may not start it by no fault of your own until June, because of all the processes that it has to go through. And so,
but if you can go and just click on a file rather than having to go back and revisit it,
and you got the photos, you got the video, you got the Matterport, you got the detail.
And I think that's what's been so interesting, whether it's, you helping us or like what Andy does, the third party estimators, where we have to get as much info as we can to make you guys have the ammunition in your gun
to get you the money. Yep.
To get the estimate built. So, and the faster you guys can do the estimates, the less questions you have, the less money it costs me. Right.
Yep.
And it's funny, like just thinking from that, like if we save $100 an estimate because we're more detailed, well, that already makes us more profitable.
Yep.
So then, okay, if we can shave off another $25, $30, $40 an estimate because we bought this camera.
Yeah.
Well, then all we have to do is 100 job blocks and boom, we've paid for it already just by the estimating costs, right?
Well, and another great way, you know, when you're talking about the squirrel, the road of life is paved with squirrels that couldn't make a decision. Another way to think about your decisions is what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario with Matterport is you spend $4,500 and you never use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so can you survive $4,500? Yeah, probably, right? I mean, that's not pocket change, but the reality is, even if it doesn't help your estimating, there's so many other applications for it, you know, like your social media, your marketing, your before and after, even if you don't charge for it, you know, and like you said, you got to do a little bit more research. And I'm not speaking from a place of, I haven't used it. I've used the 3D Rico and that is a cool piece of
and
but
I think that goes back to everything he had said was embrace technology in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be Matterport. It can be something else, but I think it's always having your eyes open to how can we, I always keep saying, work smarter, not harder. How can I continue to find a better way to improve my process? How can we, you know, and that creates like that Howard Schultz model we were talking about, that duplicatable process where eventually I don't want to do the job walks anymore.
Yeah.
But I have to get to a place where I can show somebody how to do the job walks and know that they're going to do it to the best way possible to get you, or whether we're doing an estimate, you know, fast forward a year, 2 years from now, we're doing estimates in house.
Yeah. When you onboard estimators, you want the same process.
Exactly.
Right?
Like
don't we use the buddy system? No more flying solo. You need somebody watching your back at all times.
We want to make sure that we can duplicate that. So when we do scale, it's not like, oh shit, Brandon and Brian aren't there and we can't make the estimates the right way.
The whole process is gummed up.
Yeah, like we don't want that. We want to create something at the onset like we are right now, where it's like when we get one estimator, 2, 3, 10, however many down the road, everybody does it the same way. We use the same technologies. Yeah. Therefore, you can train the same people. There's no confusion. It's like when All American comes to a job site, this is how we estimate.
Yep, the process, right? Well, and that's you know, I've talked to you about the 4 Ps: your people, your process, your production, and your progress. And process and production go together in your people. And so, but I've heard too, you know, set your staff to vision, set your system up to vision, right? So even though you're here, you want to be thinking about where are we headed. And exactly like you said, like if your ultimate goal is to not be the one having to walk the job every day. I interviewed Skylar Lewis from Superior Restoration. And he had a great perspective. He was like, they started literally in the carpet cleaning van, no prior experience, right? So I learned carpet cleaning. Once I knew it and had enough business to bring on a second truck, then train that person to do that. And then I went into the office, you know, now I've got 2 people running trucks and now I'm learning this or doing the BD. And then I'm learning the office management. So as you learn the processes, you're creating an SOP, you know, a standard of operations, standard of procedures that you can pass down and have the all-American way, right? There's so many companies, big and small, you know, like, well, this is our way, and it's just BS. They don't, because, you know, the people never have put in a system. They don't, people hoard information and don't want to bring somebody in because they're so scared for their jobs or whatever, you know.
It's job security. They feel like I'm not going to train my replacement.
What sucks about that is if you create an opportunity for somebody else, like you said, your vision should be to move upward, and that creates a position for somebody to fill the roles and responsibilities that you were doing, right? You're not more important than your roles and responsibilities. So you master those roles and responsibilities. You go to the next set of roles and responsibilities that your company needs as you grow, and you bring somebody in to fill that growth. You know, it's not about your it's tough. Like, that's easier said than done. It's not about your ego. It's not about you doing everything. It's about what does my company need for me to do for us to go to the next step and the next step?
Correct.
You know, and then be able to bring somebody in that can most likely do your job better than you were doing it, you know, because you're the one, you know, carving, you know, you're the one carving out the dam or, you know, making the road, and then somebody else is going to, like, you know, fly down it at 90 miles an hour, you know? So yeah. That's awesome, man. I mean, that's
easier said than done to be humble, right? I think that's one thing he said too, was you just need to be humble.
Yeah. I don't think Andy mentioned that, but Watley did, but,
or one of the other,
yeah. And it's funny because all these people that we interview and present company included, like, you know, humility is not necessarily, you know, the leading, you know, I don't think that's something that everybody would use to describe. But
well, especially when you call yourself the pro, you know, when you answer the phone, pro here.
Yeah. Hey, pro, what's up, Joe? So, yeah. Well, and like we've been bringing out, man, you've got so many, you know, maybe we misnamed it, but I've hopefully what people get.
No, I'm a Joe. I know I am. I'm a noob.
Well, hopefully what people get from it and what I'm taking from it, man, is it is reigniting some of the things you take for granted, and then also, you know, the passion that you and Brandon are bringing to it. You know, you guys are going to be pros, and you've got pro perspective on so many things already. So, you know, it's fun and it's exciting. So,
make it till you make it, right?
Yeah. Well, or make it. I think it's make it till you make it, right? I mean, we're all kind of still discovering as we go. So cool, man. Well, that's been fun.
Sweet.
Peace.
Awesome, man. Adios.
What is this, amateur hour?
37 minutes. Engage.
Well, the ruse is up. So if you haven't figured it out already, Pro versus Joe is just an excuse for Brian and I to smoke some cigars, drink a few adult beverages, and have a laid-back conversation about the industry.
So, dude, if you want to smoke, let's smoke. If you want to joke, then get out, dude.
So we just mask it in a veil of I'm a pro, an inadequate one, and he's a Joe. Obviously excels in that, you know, he's much more than just a Joe. But more of a laid-back tone. Not that the DYOJO is all that serious, but it did start out. I reached out. We were all quarantined and reached out to some professionals outside of the property restoration industry, trying to get some insights on COVID, and you know, reached out to some friends like Jarrett with GMS Podcast and asked, you know, how he does it, and found out there's ways to do it that aren't super complicated. And so, you know, posted the videos and the audio, and then Water Damage Daily, which is also a guest on the podcast, had some ideas on how to do social media and some of the videos. So I started incorporating that into the promos, and then started incorporating those little video blurbs into the podcast as well, because so I kind of gotta supplement it, you know. It's some infotainment supplementation. But what did we talk about? We talked about Lance Armstrong, you know, finishing the race regardless of what it takes, the toll on your personal and professional life. We talked about cigars. If anybody knows a cigar sponsor or would like to become the cigar sponsor for the Pro vs. Joe podcast, hit us up. Talked about Matterport. I know we have some great guests, like Andy McCabe. Episode 5 was kind of the catalyst for that conversation. Water Damage Daily, they use that in their professional business, and Watley with Actionable Insights actually does training on Matterport. So check that out. We did talk about various collaboration, restoration groups on the social medias that you can be a part of, and you know, there's some good back and forth and feedback, and then, you know, fighting for your customer, sometimes fighting with your customer, covering your butt, making sure, you know, your principles are intact. So fun conversation. It just rambles on and on. It's almost unintelligible.
Where's my golf club? You did it again. You fell asleep right when I was...
Well, you know,
I apologize on one hand. On the other hand, if I fell asleep, that either means I needed the sleep or your stories are boring.
And thankfully, Brian carried the conversation and has, good insights and input, even though he's the Joe in the equation. But you'll notice they are the sponsor of the podcast now that they have revamped their business to All American Restoration Services. Check out their new website, All American Res, allamericanres.com. It is really a beautiful drone view through downtown Tacoma. And if you're ever in the area, hit us up. So thank you for listening. Have a good one.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to